Hello, hello. Welcome to the vssCollab Read Aloud, and we are getting some echo. Des, can you mute? Okay. Is it coming through? I think we got it. Okay. If not, I was going to mute. Okay, thank you. All right, so there's our technical difficulty out of the way. Yes, it won't be a stream without technical difficulty. So our technical difficulty is out of the way. So I want to welcome everybody to the third issue of In Threads zine and our stories from that. These are some of our favorites, what we considered our best that we'll be reading tonight. With me, I have Wordy Girl and Desdemona, and we are anxious to read our stories to you guys. So we'll be reading in the order that is on the screen, and I am actually going to turn off the music now so that we don't have to fight with that for sound. So I think most everybody pretty much picked a mystery or something to go with that, but I'm going to have everybody introduce their story, give the title, your name, a little bit about the series and the story, and then go ahead and start reading. So all right. So I'm going to be the first reader because I didn't get a lot of sleep last night, and so everybody was kind enough to let me go first, and I'm going to get a drink really quick, and then I'll start reading. The Kyuunan Disappearances by Amy Winters-Voss. The series is Liminal Chronicles. The genre is mystery and urban fantasy. The content warning is implied death, but it's nothing gory or anything. So, when Nabeshima Yoshi moves to a small town with his boyfriend, he's quickly embroiled in a dangerous case of corporate secrets and missing persons. Settling into the backwater town of Kyuunan with my human boyfriend Jin didn't go smoothly. The move, it was fine. The kicker was that Hatoru Financial rescinded the accounting job offer when I admitted I was openly gay. I wasn't without means. Yokai have long lives. I'd accumulated a sizable nest egg and 2 degrees at top-notch universities in accounting and psychology. The lack of a job merely dinged my pride. A few days later, we heard the town needed a clerk to investigate a tax discrepancy from Maji Security, the firm entrusted with surveillance cameras for most of the Nonagawa River Valley. Jin encouraged me to apply. The salary wasn't great, but a mystery was a draw. My interview was more of a formality. The manager, Narita, couldn't hide his excitement that someone of my caliber was considering the city's pay. After accepting the position, I snagged my trusty notebook and dug into the company's records. Local yokai confirmed a kitsune, a fox spirit being, owned Meiji Security. Whoever filed had terrible handwriting, unusual for an accountant. We liked crisp characters and tidy sums. So I audited the business. The front desk attendant escorted me to accounting. She hurried, and I kept her pace. I looked at the floor plan from the city's records before visiting. She'd avoided the hallway that went directly there. Odd. Is the company remodeling? Remodeling, I asked. Her brows furrowed. No. Curious. Accounting? No filing system, missing receipts. Did they have a real bookkeeper? It looked more like a circus than proper paperwork. How could a thriving business allow this? Sifting through their documents showed their tax filings were at least close to correct. Still, something niggled at the back of my mind. I informed them I'd return. As I walked home in the warm twilight, footfalls clicked on the pavement behind me. I slowed as if lost and turned into an alley. A yokai like me didn't fear a lone man. Spirit beings were more powerful than lowly humans. A hand grasped my shoulder and a scratchy voice rasped, "Don't go back tomorrow, if you know what's good for you." Amateur. I let my human disguise fall, revealing my two-tailed cat form. This should have been ample warning to back off. "Little Bakaneko, you have no idea what you're digging into," the man said. "Give up the hunt. If not for your own safety, consider that of your boyfriend." My tails flicked as I crouched to pounce. "I'm not your threat. I'm here to warn you." His hands raised. This guy was the very image of a yakuza, a mobster. Tattoos extended down his hands beyond his white shirt sleeves, and he lacked a pinky finger. He sported a cigarette hanging out of his mouth and shades. His kind always has an angle. Liar. His shrug contrasted harshly with his clipped words. "I lost my son to this mess." "Viable? What happened?" "That company hired him, said they'd give him a legit, livable waged way out of the mob." In what universe did his son think that would work? Ex-mobsters get the low-paying jobs no one wants. I pasted on my best concerned cat expression. "And?" "Shortly after he started, all communication stopped, no trace of him." The mobster's countenance turned dark. This logic lane sent a shiver through both my tails. Was it madness to continue? No, I was on to something. Did he say anything before he disappeared that might give a clue? He mentioned a glowing ring everyone had to wear. A few guys had a strange reaction where their arm would turn bright red. The mobster stuffed his hands into his coat pockets before he continued. "Was it some kind of pact?" I shook my head. Not likely. Did he mention a kitsune or anything illegal? Would I be able to sift through this mystery's many strata? So far we only had messy tax filings and a missing yakuza. "A fox?" His face screwed up. "No, what would that have to do with anything?" I huffed. "Might as well explain. It's elementary. Yokai are aware of each other. One said a kitsune runs the business. Would your son recognize if someone was puppeteering employees?" "My son wouldn't be manipulated so easily," he scowled. "It's not rocket science, rather a simple spell most yokai can manage easily, and yet unless humans ward against it, they're susceptible. No need for offense." More vivid ink on his forearm showed as he put his hand to his chin in thought. He had a thing for bamboo leaves and tigers. The symbols probably had a meaning, though I never looked them up. He said, "The ring. Would that have been the avenue for the controlling magic?" "Perhaps, or a binding of some sort." "Were there other messages from him?" I asked. "No." My boyfriend expected me home for dinner. He was making yakitori. Man, Jin could grill well. My mouth watered just thinking about it, so I turned to go. "I'll keep your warning in mind." "You're going to keep investigating. You'll need someone to watch your back." Inquisitive and pushy. A protection racket. "Are you working for anyone that might be involved in this?" I asked. The material point was a yakuza's criminal nature. He followed me here for more than a kind warning. He scowled. "No." In The Art of War, Sun Tzu wrote, "Know thyself, know thy enemy. Even potential ones." "Then work for me." His answer, rapid blinking. I grumbled. "Helping me investigate isn't profound. You have a motive to learn more, and you know the town." "The darkness has eyes everywhere. Can you guarantee my family's protection?" he whispered. "If anything happens to me." His shuffling raised my hackles. The mobsters afraid? A new section of the maze to investigate. What's your address? My associates will need to be well fed and housed. Other Bakaneko? Yes. If you don't provide proper hospitality, I'm sure you're aware of the consequences. Humans say my species is vengeful. A little unfair, but those we reveal ourselves to are often particularly unsavory and have to be dispatched. His scent switched from sickly fear to a catnip-like relief. We will care for them as our own family. The wail of a siren on the next street over made us both jump 1/2 meter off the ground. Let's get off the street. He motioned toward the bar. I switched back to my human form and messaged Jin I'd be late. Shimosaki is so small it shouldn't have much police activity. He shook his head. Sirens have become more common recently. We took seats in the back corner and kept our voices hushed. I'm Haruki. I'll work for you on the side if you tread lightly, he said. Nice to meet you. I'm Nabeshima. Any word on what the police reports say about your son's disappearance? Not yet. I've kept my head down. Couldn't go to the police. Leave it to me. Haruki and I stayed long enough to finish a beer. My stomach growled as I left and messaged Jin that I was on my way. The next day, Haruki brought copies of the police reports. It was better not to ask how he attained it. Each dispatch mentioned piles of ash. They assumed the perpetrator was robbing graves. Something niggled at the back of my mind again, and it wouldn't leave me alone all morning. At lunch, it clicked. The rings. Haruki and I met outside the bar again. That sweltering evening, the navy Norin shop curtain waved in the blessed breeze that kept the summer heat from melting us. We ducked inside. My enthusiasm from figuring out a piece of the puzzle shut off abruptly when Haruki sat down, apoplectic. Someone dropped Haruki's son's belongings on his doorstep. I kept his sake cup filled as he vented his grief. His motive now? Revenge. I asked. What? This happened before we met, didn't it? A vein protruded from his forehead as he nodded and tossed the ring in a plastic bag to me. Will this help? You haven't put it on, have you? Haruki leaned in. No. Good. This ring may lead us to dark enough places. My assumption is it carries a binding, a specific one, to an Oni. The hulking red and blue yokai whose brains didn't match their muscle mass. The Yakuza's eyes scrunched shut. His hand crushed the sake cup. The blood welling from his hand only magnified his pain. Perhaps I should have spared him the truth. Haruki-san, you need to see a doctor for that wound. He muttered as he stood. No one cares what happened to my son. Only a few would. Still, he needed a listening ear. What was his name? I held out my handkerchief and he took it to bind the wound. Taka, thank you for asking. I'll take care of this. The next day, he didn't show up for an assignment. I slapped my forehead. Taking care of it meant that he did something stupid, like go after the killers alone. Now, I'd have to rescue a mobster. When I returned home, I found a carelessly tied bundle on my doorstep. Tell me this isn't what's left of Haruki. My heart lodged in my throat as I unwrapped it. Inside was a similar ring and a note. Underground. Got too close. Isolate list of victims by disappearance from payroll. More than just one yokai had to be behind the disappearances for this much activity. Was it more than I could handle? My hands shook. Reminding myself he was okay wasn't helping. Neither was saying he was just a Yakuza. I wavered between dread and determination. Even my boss seemed hesitant to pursue a warrant the next day. I hadn't told him everything. The fallout from this could be costly. Would it be more than I was willing to pay? First, I stored my copy of the police reports in a safe deposit box. I didn't want the files at home. If those who killed Haruki's son thought my boyfriend had to do anything with the investigation, he'd be in danger too. I also begged Jin to visit his parents. It was one thing to put myself and fellow yokai in danger, but a fragile human, a rare one, so kind and understanding, out of the question. I had to keep him safe. Ensuring I had several fellow Bakeneko in the shadows, I mustered the gall to complete the task. My cousin Miki, in human disguise, accompanied me to Magi's security. We showed our credentials and asked to visit HR. The front desk attendant's confused reaction was genuine enough. The HR manager? Another story. He gave no greeting. The finances department is that way. We're busy with the batch of new hires. What makes you think you have business here? Your reaction, fool. I grinned, allowing a hint of my razor-edged fangs to show for a second. Just enough to make him wonder what he saw. Show me your hiring records and the taxes remitted for each employee in the last 2 years. There's a discrepancy your financial department can't explain. Or do I need to further involve the authorities? Only a slight fib. He had an assistant gather the files, but hovered. As you can see, our records are impeccable. It only took a cursory glance at each file, less than 10 minutes total. The cycling of employees every few months was glaring. The ex-employees matched the names on the police record's missing persons list. Haruki's logic was spot on. Bile rose in my throat. I had to steady my voice. Your records are flawless indeed. I don't see a discrepancy here. We rose and thanked him for his time. The enigma wasn't that ex-mobsters were victims. It was how the company kept the disappearances hidden. Miki couldn't tear her eyes off the security cameras. I kicked myself. Magi's security had installed them all over town, including in the government buildings. We couldn't trust anywhere to be safe. This company watched everyone and eliminated any who got in the way. Did they blackmail people to be quiet? That might explain the messy financial records. And did we have enough evidence to take them to court? I didn't have the authority to push more. Miki tapped my arm to open a telepathic connection. We're being followed. Crap. Can we take these three? We can take these three, though I want to avoid it. We'll go to the office, pretend to report in, and head to the alley bar. To keep our cover, I said aloud. Too bad we didn't find anything useful. She rolled her eyes, though she played along. Now I owe the boss a drink. He said they were clean. At the office, Narada was surprised to see me so soon. I pasted on a neutral face as he tried not to stare at my fetching cousin. It wasn't befitting to laugh at my superior, nor would it fit our news. Miki asked via our link, "Is it safe here?" I shook my head, trying a different tack. "Boss, Miki-chan and I are going for a drink. Care to join us?" Checking his watch, he nodded. "I'll buy." He probably didn't get to take employees out often. My previous bosses enjoyed doing that on the company card, but this was a little government office. Today, his offer may have been simply to impress Miki. Either way, we needed to bring him up to speed covertly and decide if it was safe to bring the case to the police. "Miki, mind if we let him in on the link?" As Narada gathered his coat and briefcase, Miki whined, "Do we have to?" "Have another idea?" Her mouth opened as if to protest, then shut. "If he even thinks of flirting. Just don't hurt him. You trust him?" "Yeah, he's the one that sicked me on Magi's security." The sun sank behind the mountains that cradled our valley town. "Boss, can I be honest with you?" Narada paused mid-step. "Sure, is this why you wanted to go for a drink?" Miki bobbed her head. "Eddie." I took a deep breath and grabbed my boss's hand. He jerked back. "Nabashima-san, what is the meaning of this? I'm married, you know." I released him now that we'd activated the link. "Miki and I are sharing thoughts via magic. We've just added you to the conversation. It's the only safe way to communicate." "What are you talking about?" "I was trying to express my gratitude for hiring me," I said, switching to the mental link I added. "We're being tailed. We can't take long to get to the bar or it'll look suspicious. Push your thoughts to us. We can't read your mind or anything invasive like that." Miki explained. "Magi Security has cameras everywhere. Likely sound recording too. We couldn't report to you normally. We're going to converse as if this mental conversation isn't happening. Do you understand?" With eyes going wide, Narada stammered. "I see. Glad to have you on the team." A mess of his confused thoughts leaked through the link. Boss, one thought at a time, please. Otherwise, well, I'll end up with headaches. Let us give you the lowdown. He blew out a breath. Okay. We shared the relationship between the disappearances and Magi Security's employee records, and that the only remains of those missing were ashes and rings. I planned to have my contact turn over the physical evidence he had. Chances of identifying the ashes were slim to none. On the other hand, the rings might have fingerprints. Narada's swirling thoughts assaulted Miki and me again until he forced them to coalesce. Is it safe to go to the police? If we can share a link with them the same way, but it'll be harder. They're a stubborn lot, I say. Mickey's shoulders slumped. I suppose I could flirt with one. My boss's excited energy leaked through the connection as he suggested aloud. The police will help me get home after drinks. Won't be the first time. Boss, I pushed my concern through the connection. It could put you in danger. He chuckled, adding, I don't want to put Miki-san in an awkward position. My regard for Narada grew exponentially. If he'd not treated Miki with respect, I wouldn't have been able to stop her from hunting him for sport. We cat yokai are stubbornly independent. My theory is that the rings turned the wearer into a host for summoning like Lee and Oni. Is there a way to test that? Nothing Narada-san will want to see. Anything we put it on would be the host, Miki said. My boss and I grimaced. Narada said, You aren't afraid of dealing with yokai. Don't be silly, Miki responded. A few of us could handle it easy as it transformed. Us? Narada squeaked. Miki, I growled. Don't give us away. Raising his hands, Narada said, Looks like I'll be ordering a lot of sake tonight. That's more than enough for me to know. Smart man. Narada's plan worked, though it was tricky to get the officer to believe us. I had to give them a written report the next day. I included the test of putting the ring on a stray dog. As a feline yokai, I hated dogs. Still, I pitied the mutt. It had no willpower and immediately turned into an oni. Dispatching it left ashes as expected. In record time, the police arranged for the warrant. The raid made headlines all the way to the Tokyo NHK offices. Miki visited that night for dinner. As we watched the news, Miki pouted, They didn't even mention us. It's better for the humans here that they didn't. I tutted and offered her another helping of fish before she could complain again. It wouldn't be safe enough for Jin to be back. I still have to follow him everywhere. Jin patted my knee. I don't mind, love. I hated being away. The police chief asked Narada and me to sort through the massive boxes of papers and help prepare the court report. Haruki left another note. Boss, here's the latest intel. Police found rings and ash piles. Kitsune, who owned Magi Security, can't be found. Your Makanaka friends are eating me out of house and home. Please ask them to leave me alone. Laughing, I penned my response to stop poking at the police reports for now. Miki, who was happy to get one more meal from the mobster before she stopped guarding his family, volunteered to deliver it. Even after we shut down Magi Security, the town wasn't safe. Yokai friends kept mentioning a disturbing presence that only grew after the raid. Something else was out there watching us. We had another mystery to solve. The end. So, that was the Kyuunan Disappearances. Just in case you guys haven't seen in chat, there is the where to get the issues if you would like to read the stories, because there is one that, unless he shows up in the chat, we probably don't have permission to read aloud. So feel free to check those. Thank you. And hopefully Wordy, since you had edited mine, I hope that was much more satisfying ending for you, because she had edited mine and she's like, but it was too quick. So thank you guys. Thank you. So do we have any questions before we go on to the next story? Yay. Thank you, Wordy. Good, good. I'm glad it worked good. So, well, up next will be Wordy Girl, and she will read her story. And I will mute myself from both Discord and the stream here. So I will turn it over to Wordy and mute myself.
All right. Hello, everybody. I don't know if you guys can hear me. If you can, please let me know. Oh, yes. Good. Great. All right. So, yes. Hi. I am Wordy Girl, and thank you so much, as always, Amy, for letting us have our stories in the zine. This one, I did a bit of a doozy here because during summer camp, I wasn't really able to do the VSS, so I added VSS prompts from July and August into one. And also, so from the vssCollab, the prompts from July and August. And then I also did, I think it's Flex VSS, which is, it's a really cool Twitter account where they give the prompts and they come like 2 words that could be used in like 2 different ways. So it was good that I could use those flexible words, and the mystery theme really fit with what I am doing. So without further ado, my story is called One Night at Nellindill Mansion. So I will let you know that this is from my Secret Agent Someone series, which is about spies and secret agents and all that stuff. The genre is drama, suspense, mystery, but this is also a bit interactive because I creatively tried to craft the story of it's like a murder mystery introduction. So a murder mystery is scheduled to come out later this year, but this is like the introduction to that. And prior to this one, there was a virtual escape room with some of the same characters in it. So this is like a part 2 of that virtual escape room. If you would like to check it out, it's called Lifestyles of the Fish and Famous. So it's a play on words. But yes. So some of these characters you may not be familiar with, but hopefully the story is enjoyable nonetheless. So let me start to read. The Nellindills have finally rebranded their plastics company to packaging company. In celebration of their budding eco-friendly endeavors, the couple hosts a murder mystery at their new mansion. Perhaps when 2 familiar spies and an old billionaire fiend shows up, it's all part of the perfectly planned plot. Or not? Someone and Constance quietly approached the Nellindill mansion on a warm winter evening in Australia. This dinner party is supposed to be like a fancy murder mystery over some ancient artifact or something, right? Constance asks. Yes, only you have to remember, this one might actually become real, someone smirks. Once you pay up, though, it'll be lots of fun. I'd usually say you're nuts for thinking something like this is fun, but I'll give you a pass because I can see what you mean this time, Constance says. There goes Peter Plum. I bet he did it in the study with the candlestick. Where's my notebook? You may be an expert at Cluedo, but snap out of your daydream. This is altogether different, someone warns. At twilight, something will happen, and none will know who can be called friend or foe. The 2 enter and find Brenda and Darius Nellindill in the kitchen. Mr. and Mrs. Nellindill. Constance gasps, leaning in. Still have that letter from Ned Bevy? Of course, but, Darius starts. Every time we try to go public with it, Fear's grasp just doesn't let go, Brenda continues. You can't afford to wait any longer, someone says. His fast-talking and intimidating dialect might scare you into thinking he'll continue to hunt you down, but to be frank, His bark is definitely bigger than his bite, Constance whispers. You speaking out in relation to this issue might bridge the gap for so many others who could be keeping silent just like you, inadvertently helping him to uphold his public image, someone says. Plus, who'd question the most undeniable evidence in the universe? Constance adds. He spelled it all out, totally incriminating himself. Local police do a half job? Will-O-Wisp will put his butt behind bars, even if those bars are on a secret prison island. Let's ignore this real-life drama for now and focus on the mystery at hand, someone says, glancing around in suspicion. Us conversing too much is a telltale sign something's up. We'll stay in our lane. Into the parlor, not another word of it. We'll meet with a pair of you two afterwards. As someone and Constance head into the next room, Ned Bevy slips into the kitchen. The couple who blew my billion-dollar boat. Water under the old yacht, am I right? No hard feelings, he winks. We wanted to undo the pact. Desire was justified. Just a bit too late. I said, maybe I'll make an exception. So I did. Look at you two now. I'm so proud. That's not how it happened, Darius frowns, once the billionaire has wandered off into the to join the rest of the group. Sorry. He trapped us. We escaped and built our new company without him. Okay, I guess it's only fair we expose him so he won't cause any more trouble, Brenda says. Elementary, my dear Brenda, Darius smiles. As everyone settles down in the parlor, the Nellindills address the crowd. Thank you all for coming. Get comfy. But not too comfy. There's a murderer among you, Darius sneers. But forget that. Let's have a seat, shall we? You're here to ask questions and get a feel of the science behind our company's new plan of direction. Moreover, we've changed the Nellindill Plastics Company to packaging. The new name alone sends a clear message we're cutting down on single-use plastics. That's what this event is all about, Brenda smiles. Also, food in an open bar. Introduce yourselves. Dove Merritt, reporter for the Inquisitive Star, the first guest speaks up. We met before. Climate change protests, perhaps? I'm no stranger to hairy situations like this. Your admirable efforts deserve more exposure, but there are some big shots who don't like this new path you're taking. Right, ma'am, Bevy nods, catching the reporter's flinty side glance. Lots of folks have major problems with using sustainable materials, but those naysayers should shut their mouths and jump on the hype train with everyone else. We can't stay in the past. The future is now. The future is eco-friendly. The name's Ned Bevy, world-renowned billionaire. It's time for single-use plastic to vanish. I admit, I didn't see the genius plan at first, but after investigating, it all makes sense. People need to relax and support you guys before the Earth's totally destroyed. The Nellindills and I have had our differences, but I found my way out of the tricky maze I jammed myself into, and saw they were just heralds bringing me the truth I'd been ignoring. My lovely private islands, one day they could all be gone. It's no scam. Haters can ignore the signs all they want, but, as Mr. Bevy said, the bad scent of pollution will rise up sooner or later. Another joins in. Fighting climate change is not a piece of cake, so I applaud all here who are taking steps to do what they can. I'm Frank Finnick. I run the local recycling center, and let me say, I wouldn't at all be opposed to a partial or even full ban of all plastics. It's a giant problem, and we haven't even mastered recycling it yet. Neither would I, Frank. Avarice is the only thing that fuels these big companies and the whole darn government to keep treading dangerous waters, causing more harm than good, another says as he stands. My name is Lieutenant James Hutchison. All humans are perpetrators who cause mass destruction. I've fought in wars and have seen firsthand what they can do. It's up to us to take a stand and find a way to undo the damage before it's too late. I've proudly served my country for over a quarter of a century. Army, Navy, almost every military branch. But is our nation perfect? I'm very aware the answer is no. The whole world must do better. That's why I stand by you two in these efforts. Thank you, Lieutenant. a young woman says. I'm Perennia Murphy. I lead the environmental activist group at the university where I study marine biology. Yes, we're angry, but a state of revenge won't do much good. We can only go forth and lead by example. I don't agree with most extremist precedents. These seemingly senseless ploys make skeptics come to the assumption that everyone talking about eco is crazy. They lump us all into the same net. Many motives of said acts remain unknown to this day. We need to unearth facts, get to the bottom of it all, chase down and magnify the truth. Perennia pounds a fist on the table. Let's leave that other useless nonsense in the dust so that people can take us seriously long enough to learn. My name is Mr. G. I represent gargantuan megacorp Vizodabop. Yes, we use plastic bottles, and every one of you has the right to be mad at us. But I'm here to learn. It's not easy to change what the whole world is already so used to, but we're willing to try. Hey guys, I'm Viral Craze Bartleby Fig, your bridge to the young generation. I'll get kids excited about saving the planet and stuff. Once, I got all the pets at my local rescue adopted in one day, so of course we can stop global warming or whatever. I'm Lindsay Quark, U.S. Green politician. The two main parties usually sweep, and we isolated few don't stand a chance, only receiving sympathy votes. We're seen as a farce, but we need government leaders in place who can actually, we need government leaders in place who actually care about the important issues. Clarice Waterstone, Constance smirks. My partner, Simon, and I are private investigators. We specialize in bringing down corporate gangsters who make a living by hustling shady deals with the little guy. We trace their trails until their plans fall out. Yes, someone grimaces. We help clients fight for their rights. People in power often lack true logic. They play with lives like some trivial game, funding fancy city parks with one hand, while dumping rubbish on the rest of the world with the other. True that, brother man. I also agree, the final guest speaks. OZ Wildlife, explorer. I navigate the wilds of our world to protect God's creation. While humans see nature as an enigma, eludes me. Animals are much easier to understand than people, to be honest. Nice to meet you all, Brenda lifts a glass. We've got much to do. Nothing will just solve itself, but together we'll form the ultimate team and finish what we've come to start. Suddenly, the room is plunged into a darkness that draws forth many gasps. The end. All right. If there are no questions, I will quickly mute myself so that I can unmute the stream again so that I can hear the rest of the people.
That was excellently read, Birdie. I loved how you got it wasn't necessarily a different voice, but how you spoke for the characters. They were all unique. It was wonderful. Thank you. So I do owe another thanks. Thank you so much, Des, for the sub. 7 months. Thank you. Anyway, we have up next Des. Here in chat, she's Phaedra Rose. I will mute myself and let her take over with an awesome story. I got to help edit this one, so I'm excited to hear it read. Go ahead, Des.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Thank you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Oops. I forgot to look in the Twitch for responses. Okay. Yeah, thank you. And of course, I'm happy to donate to your cause. Thank you. And of course, I'm happy to. And my story is based in the planet that I created, Talitha Harbor. and it stars two characters that will also be in a far future book release, hopefully. So it'll be the second book in the series that I'm writing. The name of the story is A Blight in the Maze by Desdemona Rose. It should be me. Is it still coming through? Right, A Blight in the Maze. So Leo walked through the doorway of the complex that houses the vocation of preservation. The soft tone of the wooden door sliding across its track hissed before her. She had a brief moment of quiet, her steps dampened by work soles on thick clay floor. Then she was met with the comforting sound of the bubblers. Normally, her days were routine and simple. Today, however, she had the reverberations of her boss's voice in her head. Yesterday, Tier 3 Natsuki Okazaki had driven her all the way to the edge of the city of Inunum's ancient forest, just to inform her that she needed her to babysit. At least Soleil finally learned why Okazaki was constantly bothering the vocation's newest ecologists. He was her son. When Soleil had shown her surprise, she had told her that he was adopted, though her surprise had nothing to do with the fact that they looked nothing alike. There were strict rules against children working for their parents in the vocations. The entire situation was strange. How had she managed? It must have been miserable for Ideas. The white-haired ecologist Okazaki had claimed as her own. That woman was the most uptight preservationist in the entire vocation. Maybe the other Tier 3s feared Okazaki. The casualness of her revelation and request had bothered Soleil all night. She had simply informed her, seeming proud of the fact. The words glinted off her tongue like silk. A small shudder ran through Soleil as she sought out the unfortunate Ideas. He must have had a tough childhood. It was rare to find parents who couldn't or didn't wish to care for their kids. Birth control was readily available. Their society highly encouraged slow population growth, probably too much. The vocation she was a part of had a severe staffing shortage. She assumed that was why no one had said anything about Okazaki bossing around her child. He needs to work with someone who isn't scared of him, Okazaki had told her. Soleil resisted the urge to roll her eyes. Even now, no one feared him. He was more pompous than his mother. No one wanted to deal with his attitude. He's a junior version of you, Soleil had told her. Fallacious to a fault and unable to recognize that the rest of us don't want to be robots. Telling her supervisor that she found both her and her son insufferable hadn't freed her from her plight. She was stuck. She would have to drag him out of here and count the leaves with him. At least now Okazaki owed her. Soleil had said nothing, but she had noticed the brief look of relief that had softened the preservationist's face. She had also requested secrecy. I know it seems like he has an ego the size of a house, Okazaki had said. But in reality, he hates himself. It's complicated. If he thought no one would work with him unless I asked, well, it would probably shatter him. Soleil stepped at one of the last tanks. She watched a pink jellyfish, only a few centimeters in diameter, float demurely at the top of the water. Though it only moved a little, she found it fascinating. It was almost translucent, darker shades of pink, hinting at the organs that kept it alive. Sighing, she wondered if revealing Okazaki and Idea's relationship would cause a quake among the vocation. Maybe they would ship one of them off to another complex, and she could get on with her life. What do you think? She whispered to the jellyfish. Could I be that cold? She didn't need the jellyfish to answer that question. You're right, she said, her voice still low. I couldn't. It was easy to find Ideas. His hair was as white as the petals on the Alracia flowers. He always stood out, especially when he was in a room of Talithans their age. His skin was also very pale, though not as white as his hair. When she saw him, she walked over, giving him the warm smile that usually won her friends. He greeted her, but with a bland expression. His face didn't change when she told him that he was working for her for the near future. This is why no one wants to work with you, she thought. At least he didn't argue. As she drove the 2 hours to their destination, Soleo couldn't help but wonder about Idea's childhood. How had he ended up with Okazaki? More importantly, who had let him work underneath her? It probably explained the sour mood he seemed to be in all the time. Soleo could barely stand working for her. At least she didn't have to talk to her after she left. She glanced at him a few times, though only briefly because of the rough, narrow, rarely used road they were on. Debris was not uncommon. The solid rubber tires could take on most things, but a large rock or a felled tree could mess up their day. He was silent the entire trip. The last time she had worked with him, Soleo hadn't much luck starting up casual conversation. He had only given her curt replies or non-answers. She wasn't in the mood to conjure up a topic that would pull more words out of him right now. He was Idea's, the ecologist, and a mystery aside from that. Surely he had some life outside of his vocation. Maybe he'd be more open once they worked together for a few days. In the past, she'd always try to get out of going on assignments with him, like pretty much everyone else did. She felt a little bad then, but only for a moment. He had brought most of that on himself. When they arrived, Ideas grabbed their backpack of bottles, sample bags, and tools. They were here to survey the area, get a thumbprint of a life was living here, and look for sign of illness or pollution. As they passed by a tree, sunlight bouncing off iridescent wings caught her eye. A giant coonside fly was hunting a yellow caterpillar with red spikes. Soleo was pretty sure that male would kill the insect. She made a flourish with her hand, probably saving it from a painful death. She just hoped it didn't find another one and eat that instead. Here, Idea said when the geo-tracker on his identity pad showed they were at the assigned location. They would survey a 1 kilometer square. It wasn't a massive piece of land, but it would take half of the day. So they'll follow the boundary line shown on her identity pad to mark the area with a long red piece of twine. As she did, Idea started taking images. It looked like he was trying to get a picture of every blade of grass, so Lil rolled her eyes. New ecologists were always overzealous. You don't have to count the toes on all the insects, she told him. I think it's odd how many ecologists don't want to take the time to study the nuances of ecology, he quipped. So Lil sent a silent prayer to the universe to save her before folding her arms to give him a stern expression. We made a pact to protect Talitha Harbor as a system. We didn't pledge to count and preserve every creature and plant in existence. Ideas tapped on the screen of the light green tablet in his hand a few times. Then he showed it to her. He had pulled up the database for the sector they were working in from the vocation database. It showed every plant and critter that had been recorded since their vocation has started its duties out here. It's elementary, he said with a quirk of a smile. Looking for the information might be tedious, but it's easy. The more effort we put in, the better the vocation can track what is really happening with Talisa's biosphere. This is not science. This is science, not elementary, Soleo said flatly. She would not let this tight little ass insult her. She had 3 more cycles of experience than him. The only thing he had was a tier 3 mother. It was time for a dose of the hard truth. You cannot slide through the vocation simply because Okazaki is your mother. No one will work with you if you refuse to listen. You'll end up spending the rest of your tier 1 days washing lab equipment. His jaw twitched, though she couldn't tell if it was from surprise or annoyance. She probably shouldn't have let the part about his mother slip. Other than that, he gave no reaction. After a moment, he looked down. She watched him for a couple of seconds, expecting him to look up and continue their conversation. Then she tapped her foot on the ground. Really? She thought. He's just going to stop talking to me and stare at the ground? She realized he wasn't just ignoring her. His gaze was inquisitive. She looked down and saw a distinct, ugly yellow mug. A shudder went through her as she knelt and carefully picked up a few bits of dried forest material. She frowned at the dense clump of yellow foligo, a living organism that comprised thousands of microscopic little creatures. They lived in the little round lumps that made up the parts of the foligo that she could see. She knew it was harmless, Most of the arthropods that sought it out for food were harmless as well. There was one species, however, that was not. Menteopods, she whispered as she stood up. I'll keep an eye out, Adea said. I want to see how large it is. Investigating was risky, but she knew the information was important. They needed to document its size as closely as possible. It would keep future preservationist teams safe. She took a quick picture and made sure her identity pad attached the location. She would properly document the finding once they were safely in the Soul. Adeus found a long stick and poked carefully through the plants and forest there. He slowly followed the yellow organism, so Lil watched as he drifted further away. This thing must be huge, he called out. I don't know how the other ecologists missed it. So Lil knew. There was not enough of them. No one had been to the sector for more than a full soul cycle. There should have been at least 4 visits between theirs and the one before. We should take a sample back, Adeus called, still wandering off through the forest. She couldn't decide if he was impressed or nervous by how calm he was about this whole thing. Sure, the yellow flamingo was fascinating, a maze of a million tiny lives, but it wasn't safe. So Lil heard a faint rustle and jerked her head towards it. Pale green half-moon-shaped carapaces appeared from under some dead leaves. The menteopods had caught their scent. The crustaceans were no larger than her hand, but they didn't care what size their prey was. Individually, they were not that dangerous, unless you had an allergy to their venom. The danger came from their propensity to hunt in groups. Time to go, she cried out. The thumping sound of Idea's intentionally stopped running told her that he was listening. She started stomping her feet as well. Her nerves jumping as they creeped slowly closer. She backed away, towards their bag, not taking her eyes off the creatures creeping towards her. The vibrations sometimes scare them away. However, it worked better when you had more people. Go! Ideas yelled. Lil didn't wait. She ran, grabbing their supplies on their way out. Leaving things behind was taboo. Not breaking that norm was deeply rooted in her being. The crunching of plants behind her assured her he was close. Surely they could outrun the armored crustaceans. They were thick and heavy for their size. A grunt emerged from behind her, but Adeus kept moving. She did the same. Usually, while on assignment, the ecologists moved with care. Most areas they surveyed had no trails. Today, Solil was partial to not being busy. She finally emerged into a narrow clearing where the Solkar sat, nearly running into it. Adeus, breathing rapidly, stumbled out of the woods behind her. His skin had turned a shade paler. She watched as he pulled up the end of his pants. An icy chill went through her as he removed the perpetrator of his malaise. A narrow mouthpart pulled out of his skin. I caught one. He crumpled to the ground, leaning heavily on one arm. Menteopod gripped in his other hand. Without thinking, Solil grabbed the creature from him and jammed it into the supply bag. It went into the trunk. She helped Ideas crawl to the soap car and hefted him in. She told herself that he would have his revenge. One bite rarely causes death. He wouldn't be the exception, right? Usually their reaction wasn't this strong. Solil always insisted on driving, and now it would work to their benefit. She pushed the soul car to its limit. It flew past trees and took out low-lying branches. Call the medical complex, she ordered, hoping Ideas could manage. It would save precious time if the medical specialists were ready with the antidote. Focusing on the road took effort as Ideas moved sluggishly beside her. Could he send the message before he grew too weak? They drove up to a part of the road that had eroded along the edges. It was easy to drive through and maintaining a comfortable speed. Now she had to shift her attention to it fully. The road threatened to send them careening into a tree. A branch that had not been there before seemed to appear out of nowhere. Solil sucked in her breath rapidly through her teeth as she jerked the wheel and barely missed it. When they were still 30 minutes out, Ideas mumbled her name. She glanced quickly over, his pale blue eyes staring intensely at her. Sorry. He slumped over. His head bounced off the dashboard and came to a rest with an audible thump. Shit. Solil's heart pounded as she continued, wishing she could push the soul car faster. The engine had no more to give. How horribly ironic. Okazaki wanted her to rescue Ideas from himself. Instead, she may have led him to his demise. When she arrived, a medical team waited outside with a stretcher. She'd barely stopped before they pulled him out. Then they were gone. The quiet isolation hit as she slumped, drained. A thump behind her made her jump. Menteopod was still in their bag. She pulled out her identity pad and sent a group message to her vocation, letting them figure out who would handle it. She'd deal with the fallout and panic later. When she could walk, she got out, entering the medical complex. She saw a familiar figure leaned against a wall, her arms folded. How could Okazaki already know? Soleil joined her. You messaged me, she said before Soleil collapsed. Thank you for your quick response. A medical specialist interrupted before she could say anything else. He will recover, Natsuki. Did you know that he was allergic to them? Yes, I don't know why he wasn't more careful. Soleil frowned. Why hadn't Ideas told her? He was an enigma. He shielded her when he needed protection. That wouldn't happen again. They were supposed to work with each other, not die. Since Ideas was fine, Soleil flashed them a smile and left, not giving Okazaki a chance to stop her. She didn't want either of them to ask tough questions. Ideas was one of the most uptight people that she knew, and apparently the most careless. There was also the fact that he was working for his mother, against regulations in every vocation, yet here he was. He was a puzzle, and she was going to solve it. If Okazaki didn't honor his autonomy to run his own life, what else was she disrespecting? The end.
Another excellent reading. Oh, I love hearing how these stories turn out because I get to see them before we put them in the zine, and I get to see them after they're edited, and it's always such a pleasure to get to hear them. So thank you guys. Thank you. So I did message the person who wrote our fourth story. I have not heard back from them, so I do not have permission to read aloud. So I think we are done with stories for the night. What I will do is download this and pop it onto YouTube as soon as I can so that people can hear this again later if they missed it or came in the middle of the stream. I do want to remind everybody that you can get your copy of the third issue of In Threads. Go ahead and grab a copy of that. Read the stories. Let us know what you think of them. We had a lot of fun writing them, and yeah, we'll keep doing this. So, if you're interested in joining us for vssCollab, there's the link here. You just need to start tweeting your stories with the daily prompts. They're posted over on. If you look on the vssCollab page, there's a thing that says prompt. You can get the daily prompts. You don't even have to do them on that day. I just ask that if you want the badge, you have to use all of the prompts for the month within that month. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this, and I hope that you will join us next time. Submit a story for the zine, read it aloud. I've seen more stories than we had tonight, and they've been excellent too. So don't be afraid to join us, because these were great, but I know there's great ones out there too that haven't seen the zine. So that is what I have for you guys. I think I am going to pop over and see who is on that we could raid. Do you guys have any thoughts or questions for the authors before we head out? So Coffee Quills is on. I think we can go raid Coffee Quills, if that's okay with you guys. I'll wait just a minute or so more here. Des and Wordy, did you guys have any thoughts before we head out?
I just did want to say thank you again for this. This is always so fun. And all of your stories are really nice to read and hear you guys reading them. So it was very cool. So, and thank you to everybody who's hanging out in the chat.
Yeah, thank you, Wordy. And yes, Phaedra typing away in chat here too. So we just heard from Sam, but I just said we'd go raiding, so I let him know that we won't be able to read his aloud today, and he said that's okay. So, but that's okay. we tried. Anyway, Des, did you have any thoughts?
Read it in the zine, guys.
Yeah. It's a good one too. It's a fun one. It's very mysterious. So
yes, I've read his, and it's really good. Yeah, I really enjoy doing these, even if I'm doing them at the last minute. And I like hearing them, so definitely thank you for putting in all the effort to put these together.
Glad to. I love doing the vssCollab stories because otherwise I would not get extra stories written besides my novels. So I'm just glad to have you guys joining me on this. So it's not just me doing this. But anyway, you guys can go download the in-thread zine. I always print one for myself, but you can download it, print it in book format, or it's in PDF. You guys are welcome to go do that. We will go raid coffee quills here. So I'm going to set that up. Raid coffee quills. Alrighty. My raid shout is Magical Tales. Feel free to copy pasta that or add your own, edit mine to include your own, however you like. I will see you guys over in Coffee Quill stream. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. See you over there.